I'm Tanya Fox, and you're listening to Fox Talks Business Podcast. I started my career in the corporate world, but always played to my own tune and loved to think outside of the box. This didn't always serve me well with the bosses, so I made the decision to become an entrepreneur. And that little seed of entrepreneurial curiosity continued to grow as I branched out into retail, service, and franchise businesses. Now, I have been fortunate to have amazing successes in the last 2 decades, but they did not come without some really big failures and even bigger lessons learned. And that's why I started this podcast, not just to share the failures, but to show you how you can turn every failure into a success. We're going to hear from some amazing humans from around the world that are going to share their stories of the good, the bad, and the motivational entrepreneurial life has to offer. After all, life is too short to make all of the mistakes yourself, so why not learn from each other? And of course, we're going to have some fun, because as I always say, well, you know what? I'll tell you that at the end of the episode. So thank you so much for coming on the show, Bob. I'm really excited to talk with you today.
Well, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited as well.
So you have kind of an interesting journey. Only I know that because I have a background in the financial field too. So I'm not trying to give too much of it away, but can you take us a little bit through your journey of how you got to where you are right now?
Yeah, absolutely. It is sort of a strange journey. I actually went to college to be a lawyer, and I took accounting to help my grade point average. And then I sort of realized I didn't like any of the attorneys that I had met. And since I already had all my credentials to sit for the CPA exam, I went into accounting. And I got into public accounting with the idea that I would get to learn about different businesses so I could figure out what business I would like to run, not thinking I'd be running an accounting practice, public accounting. That wasn't on the agenda. And so then I got into obviously comedy and started doing stand-up. And
those things go, and that was what I found so interesting, because I'm like, most accountants, and I know because I've been in this field, are not known for being stand-up comedians.
I always like to joke that, it's my passion is accounting, but comedy pays the rent. So, but so I was doing comedy, and the Comedy Store, Mitzi Shore, was like, called me up and she's like, Bob, you got to help me. You got to help the club. And all my friends were performing and stuff. So I became the CFO at the Comedy Store. I've been there for 24 years. And what happened though, is all my friends were in entertainment. I work with a lot of creative folks. I was also looking at my own personal financial situation in that I was making poor choices or seemingly poor choices because people with lesser degrees or lesser education were doing much better with their money. And so I started this personal journey and looking at my own fear and my own self-sabotage, and then ended up getting certified in somatic therapy, because that of course goes right with comedy and accounting. And so what happened was I started realizing that, my clients would come in to do a tax appointment and be crying and having these heavy money processes. And I realized there was so much shame around our financial choice and that we don't know and we're all alone. And so it just felt really natural to combine my finance with my somatic therapy work, and using comedy as a way to break down defenses and really get in there and start looking at people's relationship with money in terms of how they emotionally make choices.
Yeah. And I love that, because I think it's so true that, I know, just from experience that so many times, and I don't know if you've experienced this, that you'd be sitting across from a client, you'd be explaining sort of their financial statements, and they're like, yes, oh yes. And they're walking out of that going, oh, there's that word that person just said. Like,
Nothing.
Like, and
Yeah.
you try to, dull it down, like not that, but I just find that there is such a stigmatism that people feel, if I ask for help when it comes to money, that there is that huge shame piece there, that's just something that you should know how to handle money. But the truth is that a lot of the times we're not taught that.
We're just not taught. And, even in the accounting profession, I used to go to continuing education seminars, and the speaker would talk in very big words, and everybody's like, and I'm like, excuse me, I'm from Tennessee. I have no idea what you're saying. Help me out. And people are like, thank you, because nobody wanted to act like they didn't know. And I'm just like, look, I'm a dumb hick. I don't know. Help me out. Just explain it.
Yeah. And I think that, I mean, obviously we would like to say, no, happiness runs my life. But the truth is we'd all need money. It's just,
Right.
it's just the reality of it all. But I love when like you talk about needing financial therapy. Can we talk a little bit about that? Because I think that's going to be a huge eye opener to a lot of people.
Yeah, absolutely. So the reason I say that people need financial therapy, and especially people in business, entrepreneurs, uh, we're all most of us are operating from a lot of unconscious decisions we made when we were 5, 6, and 7. We're taking it in. A 5-year-old's making decisions, deciding it's fact, and then using it to decide their life outcome. If we can start getting familiar with and comfortable with our past, and if we can reverse engineer back and look at where we started making choices about money, money's evil, money means conflict, I'm not worthy, whatever those things are, if we can start to bring it to consciousness, then when that under voice that comes in and says, you don't deserve it, you're not capable, there's so many people much better than you, you can say, oh, there's that voice. Or there's that voice. Hey, thanks for sharing. Why don't you sit over here in the corner? Maybe it's not going to go away, but at least we can then consciously work around some of our sabotage and our blocks.
And I think that there's so many people that have that, but maybe even don't realize that
Right.
that they do, right? So what would you say is things that people could look at, or even sort of flags that people could go, maybe I don't have the relationship with money that I thought I did?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the first thing to do is really start listening to what you say. I'm so broke. I don't have any money. Well, maybe I'm cash flow poor at the moment, but I've got lots of assets. So, right, I'm telling myself a story that it's a fact, or I need the newest smartphone. I have to have, and yeah, it'd be nice to have it. I'm longing for that. But starting to look at what's really true, or people that will say, I really want to have a lot of money, but I'm terrified to explore my money stuff. Okay, so maybe I'm learning to do it different. So we try to bridge it. I'm scared of it and I'm going to push through it versus negating it. And so really getting conscious of what we say, and then being aware of when you go into the store and they decline your credit card, or your credit score's higher or lower than you anticipated. Do you have a or and we physically, viscerally feel it in our body. And so we start paying attention to those things.
And I think we've all, I mean, I know I've done that. I've had younger moments. Well, I would like to say that they're all younger. I haven't had it in a while. I've been pretty good with my money, but I remember having those days where, the card would get declined and I'd be like, oh, there must be something wrong with the card here.
Right.
I must have put the pin in wrong. Meanwhile, secretly, I'm switching to a different card. That one,
Exactly.
there was nothing wrong with it,
No.
except for the fact that I didn't manage my money really properly. But,
Right.
I've even suffered from, that. And it was so funny because I was talking with somebody today and we were talking about, the perception of a lot of people say, oh, I really want to be rich. But then when you say, why, what do you want to do with that?
Yeah.
And a lot of times they're like, oh, I don't know. Right. But it's just,
Absolutely.
That's what you're supposed to aspire to, is it not? Is to have a ton of money.
Well, and that's such a great example, because in workshops, I'll say, who wants a lot of money? I do. Great. What do you think of rich people? Rich people are greedy. They're evil. I hate rich people. Oh, so you want to be one of, no, I don't really want to be that. Right. So we're aspiring to be something we hate.
Right. Yeah. I love that analogy because that's very true,
Yeah.
And I think sitting down and actually, maybe even people who are listening, sit down and do that exercise. What do you think of those people that have what it is that you want? Like, how do you actually feel about them?
Absolutely. And also, I would just say, to get real specific, what's rich? I had a client one year came in and goes, oh my God, Bob, I made so much money. I don't even know what we're going to do. And I'm like, oh my God, what'd you make? She's like, I made $17,000 this year. And I went, wow, we're going to have some rough taxes here. Right. I just went with it. But for her, $17,000, she was $1 million. Other people, $1 million isn't enough. Right.
Yeah.
So how much? Like, be specific.
And I think that that's true. Do you find that people, really don't sit down and think of, how much do I actually want?
Right.
Because we do that, right? And I think there's a lot of people that are out there that they'll go, and you see it a lot at the stores, right? Somebody will go through at Christmas time and it's like $500-600, and they're like, oh my God, like I'm suffering so much. And you're like, you just spent $500.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Like,
No, it's totally true, right? Or I can spend $5,000-6,000 on a trip, and then something else costs $75, and I'm like, I'm not paying $75.
that's ridiculous, right?
Oh my God. And they're like, Bob, but like, I refuse to buy coffees at airports, right? Because why should I pay $3 more?
Yeah. And I think it's really getting clear. Like, do you think it's getting clear with yourself on
Yeah.
really starting to recognize,
Mhm.
like, how can people, what are some of the tips you can do? Because I think that people end up going into autopilot. So what are some of the tips that you could do for people to keep that always in their mind front about how they're interacting with their money?
So I always encourage the people I work with and in workshops to actually just start recording money in and out. Just as a way to start to be aware of, oh, I got a gift card today. That's money in. Oh, I bought lunch today. And it cost me this much money. It's so funny. People go, oh yeah, I spent $2 at Starbucks. Can I see the receipt?
I don't think
It says
anybody can spend $2
$4.75.
at smart Starbucks.
Right? I know. They're like, yeah, it's just a couple bucks. No, it's not. Oh, the prices went up. Yeah. So just starting to like record money in and out is one thing. Starting to just be aware of the languaging that we use. And then really just start checking in with, when you're making, like, if you're overdrawing your bank account a lot, you might, instead of going, oh my God, I can't believe I did that. Wow, isn't that interesting? I seem to always overdraw my bank account, even though I think I'm planning ahead. Isn't that curious? And what's the benefit I get by not balancing my bank account? Like, there's some negative pleasure that I might be getting to reaffirm that I'm not good enough or I'm not capable. So what am I getting out of this? And what's it costing me? My self-esteem, uh, whatever it might be, or my fear to move forward. And so looking at what is the cost benefit emotionally, um, in what I'm doing with my money.
So if someone is sitting there and they're like, okay, I want to have a healthy relationship with money, but I don't really know what that is. Can you give them
Yeah.
some ideas on what they should be aspiring to? I mean, obviously, besides you do have a book out called The Money Nerve, which I
Yeah.
do recommend. It's a great book, but besides that.
Yeah. Well, so I mean, I think the first thing is to ask myself, am I willing to do the work? Right? Because I'll start with people, and some people say, no, I'm not willing. And I'm like, oh, we're done. Thank you. Right? Because
Right.
we have to be willing, or we have to be willing to be uncomfortable. We have to be willing to suspend judgment, be a little kind to ourselves. I think the first thing we want to do is start looking at how we were socialized. What did mom and dad say about money? What did they not say about money? Did they fight when they talked about money? Was I the kid that got the free lunch program, or was I the kid that mom and dad dropped me off in a chauffeured car? Like, all of these things start to play in as a kid. Did I wear hand-me-downs, or did I have the brands? And so to start to look at all of that, I think one of the things that I find these days, most people are unhappy with what they don't have, instead of actually focusing and having some gratitude for what they do have. Oh my gosh, I have a running car. I've got shelter. I'm able to eat. I'm able to take a trip. And I think we just get so caught up in, I need more, and we're running this hamster wheel trying to get to somewhere that we don't even know where we're trying to get. And if we could just slow down, take a breath, and really just start saying, wow, these are some amazing things that I have. So taking a personal inventory, looking at my skill set, looking at my actual assets, and getting a sense of, oh, I had more debt than I thought, or actually I have more net worth than I thought. And even that, though, our net worth on paper doesn't necessarily translate into our self-value as a person.
Yeah. And I love that exercise because I think it's so true. We, like you said, we get stuck in always, looking at, the bigger house or the better car or whatever, and not realizing, I was even looking, and my son was talking about, well, maybe we could like move into a different house and then I could have like a room that's my own office. And I was like, are are you kidding? We are not moving into a bigger, this house is too big as it is. And he's like, I don't think so. And I'm like, sweetheart, we each have our own living room, essentially. Like, it's ridiculous.
We're good.
But I think it was, and it was funny because I was coming at it from, I came from a family where my mom was, I don't want to say frugal with money, but she was very careful and she didn't spend, and she never had it. Like, she didn't like materialistic things. And so she bought kind of like what she needed. And it was a gift for her if she bought herself something like a plant or like a little decor piece. That was like a big thing to her because she was very careful. And so I carried that through. Whereas my son, I raised him not realizing with more than what I felt I had as a child, and then looked at him and was like, I've raised you to be spoiled. If you think that this house is like, when I was young, this is what we lived in. And right. But I think that that's so true. We don't take the time, I think, to sit and realize that those things were sort of, ingrained into us subconsciously.
Absolutely. And I don't know, I know Canada is a little bit different in the way people are socialized. It's more for the good of the group than the individual. I mean, I think that shifted some, but, we're taught, at least in the US, that we are our accomplishments. There is a subtle subtext. And I struggled with that for a long time. I've got to have the best grades. I've got to get all the awards. I have to have the most interesting trips. I've got to win. I've got to make more money than the majority of people. Otherwise, I don't have value. And if I'm not producing, I don't have value. So, my firm has gotten much bigger. And so there are other people doing things. And I'm like, no, let me do that. They're like, no, Bob, you don't have to. That's not what your value is. I'm like, no. Because there's still a part of me that goes, no. If I can crank out 20 tax returns today, I'm amazing. If I only do 2, well, it's not so amazing.
Yeah.
So that's back there.
And I think that that's important that and thank you so much for saying that story, because I think it's really important for people to realize that this isn't a one and done thing, that
Not
this is something almost every time you're hitting that next level, you're going to bump into these thoughts again.
Absolutely. And that's what I tell people. I get cocky once in a while. I'm like, oh, I got this all dialed in. This is my area of expertise. Overspend, oh, geez, how did I get here? Because I get a little cocky. It's a lifetime relationship. It's just like a relationship with a person. And there's so many flavors of this relationship. It defines our self-worth, our sexuality, our ability to set boundaries. There's so much. It's just such a loaded topic.
Yeah. And so you have a very interesting story as well about your beliefs around money that happened in Africa. And I really want to hear that story.
Yeah. So, this was a big aha moment for me. I went to Tanzania and I went to Kenya, and I always try to make my vacations practical. So I was running a marathon as well and climbing Mount Kilimanjaro, so that it was like,
that makes sense. Yeah.
Because that makes sense. Because you can't just go and sit by a pool. That's a waste of a vacation. Be productive, make it interesting. So, I was there, and the average income at the time was about $100 a family. Not a lot of money. That's annually $100. We're talking less than $10 a month. These people in Tanzania were incredibly happy. Incredibly happy. Tell all your friends to come visit. And I kept going, wait a minute. You don't even have a car. You don't have water to bathe in other than a bucket. There's no running water. There's no electricity. You're living in mud huts. You don't have DVDs. How can you be so happy? Right. And I was like, I got to get back to my little Mercedes and my comfortable things. And it was really, it was mind boggling to me. And I really struggled with how can they be happy? And I was so sure that I had the right point of view.
Right.
I had limited experience. And so when I got back, it really, really caused me just a lot of soul searching. And it really took me a place of really learning to express gratitude and really coming from hopefully from a much humbler place. It really was humbling to see that these people were just joyous to receive a empty recycled bottle that I was going to throw away because they could use it for something. Like there was just, they would have given me the shirt off their back. They would give me their last piece of food. And most of us would have been like, oh, it's dirty. It's not on a clean plate. And they were just coming from a place of like, we all have to make it work. And I think one of the things that in a first world country, we have the privilege of building fences and pushing people away that we don't want to look at. In other developing countries, you got to learn to make it work. You got to learn to deal with your community because you don't have options and you need each other. And I think that's one of the things that we've lost in being such a developed country is this recognition that we actually do need community and that we actually do need each other and that we actually want to be in connection. And so it really shifted the way I looked at what was abundance, and much appreciative that trip occurred.
And I think it's so true when you're put into situations like that, you realize that oftentimes these people that we deem as having nothing tend to give more because
Yeah.
they see the value in it, and their joy is in that sharing and is in being able to help each other. And it's definitely a different perspective because let's be honest, for most of us, and I'll say in Canada and the US for sure, live pretty privileged lives, the majority of us.
Yes.
But forget that we live privileged lives.
Right.
We don't think that, there's always something to eat, but we still open the fridge and go, oh my God, there's like nothing to eat.
There's
Meanwhile,
nothing.
there's food in there, right? But we don't, it just doesn't, kind of occur to us that somebody's opening a fridge and there is nothing. There's the light. That's it.
Yeah. No, it's so true. And I think we just don't. When I was in Zimbabwe, working at a rhino sanctuary, of course, because I had to have a vacation. Like, because you got to do something while you're there. And I love rhinos. So I was working at this rhino sanctuary, and we got to go to this hut. We got to go to this little village. And so we had the chance to milk a cow that looked like it hadn't eaten in weeks. We got to plow the field, and they cooked us a meal, and we carried water on our heads in those buckets. And, there were some younger people there, and they're like, oh, this is sort of fun and stuff. And I said, well, here's the thing. It's great that your parents have millions of dollars. But these folks here, they didn't wake up today and say, oh, do I get to milk the cow? Oh, do I get to plow the field? Oh, can I go carry some water? No, that's their life. It's not a choice. And that we are very privileged in that we got to decide, I don't want to milk the cow, but I'll carry the water, right? We have choice, and we don't have to feel bad about our privilege. But I do think it's our responsibility to pay it forward and recognize that we do have privilege so we can help other people that maybe don't have the same means.
And I think that that's something important too, to think about, that people need to sort of put in their, in their thoughts when they're thinking, okay, like, as they say, the all-American dream. And I mean, we have the same thing here. We don't quite call it, I call it the all-American dream, where somebody wants to be, the rich and famous and all of that other stuff. A lot of the times, like you said, people don't want to put the work in. And I think that's the same thing for money. Do you find that a lot of people are like, this is just what I was dealt with in life and it's not going to change? But there is always that deep-seated thing, like, I want this to change. I don't want to always be worried about how, if my lights are going to get turned off or if I'm going to be able to have food in the fridge. So what is one step that people can take to sort of start changing the way they're spending their money, or the way they're using their money, I guess would be a better term?
Well, I think so. The first part of, like I said earlier, is to start just journaling. I mean, just writing down money coming in and out, just to start to get aware of it. And then I think it's important to really sit down and think about short-term, mid-term, and long-term goals. Like, what do I want to do in the next year? What do I want to do in the next year to 2 years? What do I want at the end of my life? And then start thinking about, are the current spending habits that I'm doing now in integrity with what I say I want my life to be? Am I saying I really want to be able to save for a house, but I'm going out and spending $200 a night at the bar?
Right.
Or, I had a friend that's like, I'm so poor, I can't get my business off the ground, but just put $3,000 flying to Cabo. Right. And it's like, my choices aren't serving what I want. So that's the
Right.
first thing. It's like getting really honest. And then I get people to work on what I call an honest budget, meaning if I've got a shopping addiction, if I have a drinking habit, it goes in the budget. I'm not going to judge it. But if I'm trying to actually figure out where my money's going, I need to know that I'm spending $300 a month on lottery tickets, because I'm going to keep coming up short if I'm not honestly looking at my numbers. And I think if we can start to get really conscious of every time we make a purchase, one great exercise to do is just use cash for a couple of weeks. In the US, if somebody gives me $100 bill, I will try and hold on to that forever so that it doesn't get split up, because then it just sort of disappears. Right. So, but it feels different when you hand over a $20 versus swiping a card, because a card feels the same when you swipe it at $20 or $2,000. But when I'm handing out cash, ooh.
And that is so true. Like if you think about when you have a larger bill, as soon as it breaks out, then it's just like, oh, it's just $5. It's just this, it's like, I always think of people going into the dollar store and they're like, everything's $1. And I'm like, but 100 of them is still $100.
That's right. That's
sure.
Right.
Everything is $1, but you're overfilling your cart.
That's exactly right. It's just this. And that's where we sort of tell ourselves a story. It's just a buck. Most people will round down on their expenses and round up on their income, when in fact we should round down on our income and round up on our expenses so that we actually leave ourselves a cushion when we're trying to figure out our budget.
And I really liked what you said about don't judge it, but put it in the budget. Like that should be on a t-shirt, because I think that that's so true. There's oftentimes that people, sort of like a diet, when people are trying to budget for themselves, they cut everything out. Like, I'm not going to have anything. I'm not going to have any fun. I'm not going to go out. I'm not going to eat out. And then they break the habit because it's hard, right?
It's hard.
Being honest about what it is that you spend, I think is really important. And I know that was one thing that was really beneficial, that I was like, if I don't get a chance to go out and do this one thing that I really like to do, I'm not going to stick, like, I just throw the rest of the budget out of the window, right? Because as soon as I make one mistake and I'm like, well, this month's screwed.
It's all ruined. Right. It's just baby steps. And I think that's so important that, as you're doing some of the stuff that's not so much fun, trying to rein in debt, trying to get an emergency fund saved up, to give yourself small wins, to actually go out and at the end of the week, hey, I got 4 out of 5. I got 2 out of 6. That's better than 0. And celebrate the wins, but in small ways. And looking for creative ways to have fun with your family or with the kids without having to spend lots of money to make it be a valuable experience.
Yeah. And I think it's important to recognize those steps, because so often people, they get to a certain point and then they go, well, this is boring, because money is not all that fun. Let's be honest.
It's not, but you know what? We make financial decisions every day, hundreds of times a day. Do I buy that shirt? Do I buy that dress? Do I buy that purse? Do I buy my lunch? Do I get the extra coffee? Do I add the whipped cream or an extra? Like, we're making decisions and then we're thinking, are our friends going to judge me? Should I stop drinking because I know my limit was I could buy 2 drinks, but my friends are staying, so I don't want to tell them I can't afford a 3rd drink? Or do I set a boundary? It brings up a lot of stuff when we're trying to actually move forward. We actually have to set boundaries and say no to people and actually say, this is what I stand for. That's scary.
I think it's true, because I think we have that stigmatism. And I think, entrepreneurs are really guilty for that, because you're trying to live up, especially when you're doing well. I had a company that was doing really well. I still have it today. But I was at a point where I had, 15 employees working for me, and everybody was like, oh my God, you're doing so good. It's fantastic. Meanwhile, I'm going, I am literally making the same amount I did when I was by myself, because by the time I paid the employees and, I had I thought it would be good to have like a daycare center for them. And by the time all was said and done, I really wasn't making any extra money, but there was that stigmatism that I was allowing to be put on me, that people are like, oh my God, you're so successful. And they're flying all over the place. They're like, hey, we're going to go to Vegas for the weekend. I'm like, I can't afford to go to Vegas. Like,
Yeah.
so I was busy in like a conference, or I don't know, I was doing something, right?
Yeah.
But instead of just being honest and saying, no, I don't want to spend my money doing something silly like that. Like, you go and have fun, but because at the time I was saving for a house, right?
Yeah.
But I think that people get caught in that social aspect of their
Yeah.
money.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the media doesn't help. Advertising, have it now, you deserve it. Don't wait. Why wait? You're going to be dead later. So like figure it out
Yeah,
later.
you can't spend it when you die.
Spend it, get everything you want. And I think we do get attached. Our ego steps in and says, oh, my value is in my material things. I have a client, a friend and a client who had this amazing duplex that he had remodeled in Los Angeles in a historic district. It was worth $2 or $3 million. Each duplex had like 2,400 square feet. I mean, it was gorgeous. And he was very skilled at design and architecture. It was beautiful. He called, and everybody knew that that was his baby. He called me up one day and he said, I'm selling the property. And I said, what do you mean you're selling the property? That's like, that is you. And he said, you know what? When my property becomes and defines who I am, I know it's time to let it go because I don't want to be my things. And he sold that property and moved into a 1-bedroom apartment for 2 years because he just realized he was starting to tap into his ego and he was making decisions from his ego instead of from his heart.
I think it's such a good story for people because it's true. We do let our ego take over for that. So,
Yeah.
I love that. And I think, for people really understanding what emotion they have for money, and I know you've talked about that a lot, but I think that that's such a key thing for people is what emotion are you attaching to everything that that you spend, and the reasoning behind why you're buying those certain things.
Absolutely. And here's the thing, even in this journey, you may discover a couple of things about yourself that may be difficult to fix, or you may never fix. But at least if you're aware of it, then at least you can work around or find support. Like I am terrible on the phone with the IRS. I call up and go, hey, can I help my client? They immediately double the fine. They do whatever. And I get very impatient because I'm like, oh my God, you people don't know what I'm talking about. And I don't get on the phone with the IRS. I have staff get on the phone. They get much better results because they're not emotionally attached to the situation like I am. And so it's important. So that's probably not going to change. I'm always going to like explode when I'm dealing with certain situations. I get triggered. But if I know that, I can bring other people to help diffuse me, and then I can minimize the impact of this thing I don't want to let go of.
So if an entrepreneur is out there right now and they're like, they kind of know their numbers, because I think a lot of people sort of have, or at least they should have a general idea of sort of what's going on, but they're like, I know I want to be better, or I know I need help with it, because I think a lot of people wait. I know here in Canada, a lot of people, I know, because there are a lot of my clients that at the end of the year, they come and they go, tell me how I did. And you're like, you should have asked me that like last year,
Right.
throughout the year, not at the end. But if someone's like, okay, I really need to get a better handle on my money. But again, there's that fear thing of going into an accounting office and not really knowing. What are some of the questions that they should be asking when they're looking for somebody to help them with their finances for business?
Well, I think it's important when you're looking for somebody to help you, ask them, have you been an entrepreneur? What is your experience? Because some financial advisors and accountants have worked a regular job and they've done everything very safe and they may have no idea. So it's important to find out, if I'm buying a house, I want to know that the person I'm talking to has bought a house. I don't want somebody going, yeah, you should buy a house. I mean, I rent, but you should do this, right? I want people that have some experience. They don't have to be experts. I'm not always a big fan of experts who know everything and then don't have time to actually hear what I need. So I go in and I'm like, how much are you going to help me? Like, what can I expect? Are you just going to do my taxes? Can we meet once a quarter? How do I look through my finances? How do I compare month to month? And like, there's a lot of good stuff out there on how to assess. how often we should be looking at stuff. You know, one of the biggest things I find with entrepreneurs, and I do these live workshops, and one of the things we do is I do an exercise called difficult conversation. And I'll ask, and so a lot of times I've got a lot of entrepreneurs. And so I'll say, okay, how about, why don't you pitch your business to some future investors? And they're like, yeah, that's great. Like, okay, that's probably not going to get you much money. They're like, oh my God. I don't know what to say. Right. Well, that's important to know. If you can't even do a presentation in a fake setting, what are you going to do when you get out in the real world? It's not going to be any different. And so learning those skills, learning how to communicate better. If you're an entrepreneur, you got to be able to be a people person to a degree. You've got to be able to bank on relationships. And so I think that's a really important piece of the puzzle. So I think it's just getting really conscious. And then also, you know, I had a client that went out on his own, had this amazing business, and then things got really tight and there was some self-sabotage. And somebody came in and offered him a job for like $250,000, which was more than what he's making, but he had this beautiful office. And I said, you should take this job and close your company. This is going to give you benefits, all this stuff. And he goes, my parents will be so disappointed.
Right.
I have to stay. And I'm like, so you're going to bankrupt yourself to not disappoint your parents instead of, look, here's the numbers. You're going to come out way ahead. Nope. My mom is so proud. She'll be devastated to know that I failed.
Right. Yeah. And it's those sort of ideas that we almost build for ourselves in our head, because probably if he would have said, these are the reasons I'm doing it, she would, like most moms would have been like, I just want what's best for you. Like whatever makes you happy.
See, and you know, it's so interesting. I've asked this question a lot with clients, and this is for entrepreneurs. This is for anybody that's out there saying, well, you know, I need to do this and this because my parents, they won't love me, or I've got to do this. And I'll say to people, if you could just ask your parents, ask them how much money you have to make or how much success you have to make for them to love you. And like that's we don't ask that question. We actually make up stories about what the answer is. But the truth is, most of our parents would say, you know what, I just want you to be happy. I just want you to be in a relationship. And yet we think, if I don't make this much money, the love will disappear, or if I don't at least pretend to make this amount of money. And it's such a fallacy and such a false narrative that I think the more we can actually start to get clear about, oh, it's actually mom and dad love me because they love me, or they don't, but it's not about, you know, not saying everybody has wonderful relationships with parents, but again, it's really about that relationship than it is about the dollar amounts.
And I think it's true of, you know, even just people sitting down and building a relationship like you would with a person with your money. And how, you know, how do you want to be treated in a relationship? And are you treating your money that way? Or are you treating it like, are you abusing it?
Absolutely. Well, I encourage a lot of my clients as an exercise to go online, open their wallet, talk to their, hey, dollar bills, go out and make some money today. Talk to your friends. Tell them to come stay in my wallet. It's really comfortable. Right. And make it playful. Go into the bank accounts online and go, wow, look at our activity today. I see things are moving around. Actually make it a relationship. Like, be playful and not make it so, it's money. It must be painful and, you know, unpleasant.
Yeah. And I love that. I think that's such a good technique. And I've used that too. Anytime, well, I haven't been able to travel in so long, but last time I went to the States, my husband, he's always like, why do you still have like $26 American? I'm like, don't touch it. That stays in the wallet until because one time I will go again and then I will use that. But it's funny that is like, because that was always a thing my mom did, because she traveled between Canada and the US so much. So she was like, always just hang on to it, because the Canadian dollar sucks. So when you exchange money, you keep it as long as possible. But it's funny. I don't ever feel like I don't have money. There might not actually be any of my country's currency in there, but I always feel there's always money in my wallet. And that's been a thing that when I get actual cash, I tend to hang on to it because I'm like, no, there's money. I could spend that if I wanted to, but I hang on to it.
Well, and you know what's even funny about that is you've got this money, right? And you see it. But so I do this exercise where I'll have people stand across from somebody else and I give everybody different denominations and different currencies. So like I did a couple of workshops in Canada and they could care less about, I mean, they sort of like the American dollar, but they sort of like the Canadian money better.
It's more colorful.
It's more colorful. And, you know, and so it was surprising that they weren't as triggered around $100 bill as somebody in the US would have been. But here's the thing. In all of these situations, I ask everybody to close their eyes and hold the money and tell me which is the $5 and which is the $100 bill. You can't tell. We all just made an agreement that this piece of paper is worth more than this piece of paper.
Right.
But there's no difference. It was an arbitrary agreement that we all made.
Yeah. And that we continue to keep in our heads, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. That's a great way for people to kind of rethink or change how they think about that.
Yeah, no, it's just the story goes Ray Charles used to ask to be paid in $5 bills because he obviously couldn't see his money. So at least if he was getting $5 increments, he knew he could only be, if you were giving him ones instead of fives, he couldn't cheat him out of much money.
Right.
You know, because he couldn't see it. He had to trust other people.
Yeah. Oh, that's so true. Yeah. And you wouldn't think about that, right? The little tricks that people use. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if someone's sitting there and they're like, okay, I really do want to change my relationship with money. I know this is a path I need to go on, but I'm absolutely terrified to take it. Where can they find you or your workshops or your books, or how can they be like, okay, Bob, can you help me out here or put me on the right track?
Absolutely. So they can find me at the Money Nerve, NERVE, Nerve. I'm a nerd, but it's Nerve. And that'll take you to the book. We've got a lot of blogs. We've got resources. I have an online course called Mastering the Emotions of Money. That's a 12-week course that takes you through daily several exercises to just look at our past and then move it into the future. They can reach out, info at the Money Nerve. If they have questions, we're always happy to engage with people. I have a Money You Should Ask podcast where we have casual conversations around money, just to let people hear other people's experiences and go, oh, that's me. It's really everything that I've worked on has been to really help remove the stigma of shame around financial literacy or lack of financial literacy so that people can start to actually not have to walk around feeling like they're the only person that didn't get the financial download.
Well, and I appreciate you putting humor into it because quite often accountants are very stoic and they're not known for having a sense of humor. So it's nice to see somebody who's like, no, we're not all like that.
We're not all like that. I mean, it's a fair assessment.
It is. I remember having like, I was part of the chamber and we'd always get the accountants would come in at the end of the year and they would do the financial report and people would fall asleep. And I was like, can you just like blow a kazoo or like let a balloon go or like something? Just anything, like you're killing people. And it was so funny because the following year they brought a little thing and every time they were like, and this profit, we did really good and this went up or this went down. He blew this like little kazoo. And then at the end, he's like, was that okay? Like it was still very monotone, but it was so funny because months later he was like, I actually ended up getting more clients that came to me because they remembered that. No one remembers when I talk. And I was like, see, you made money fun. You made it interesting. And I love that is what you are doing is making money fun and not making it feel like it's a shameful thing that you need to hide and never talk about. Right.
No, money is an awesome thing to have. It gives us lots of opportunity. It gives us choice. It gives us the ability to help other people. So for me, there's nothing shameful about having money. And we don't have to take it so serious. Like we can have fun and have abundance.
Yeah. I love that. Well, thank you so much. It has been an absolute honor to get to know your stories more. I am sure there are a lot more. The rhino one was great for sure. And we'll make sure that we have all of the ways that people can find you and all of your products on our blog post as well. So thank you so much for your time.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been a real pleasure. And I hope that people got some information here to get inspired to have a healthier relationship with their money.
See, who says you can't have a conversation with an accountant and laugh at the same time? I want to thank Bob so much for coming on the show, and I really do want to recommend his book, The Money Nerve. It is a great book that really helps you to get down to the nitty-gritty of why you have the belief systems you do around money. And I think it's just as important to know the good relationships with you have as the unhealthy relationships that you have. And the other thing that this book does is really help you to create honest budgets. And so often people create budgets that they're never going to be able to stick to, that restrict them from so much. And then it just becomes another hardship. And Bob has a really great way of how you can create these honest budgets that aren't going to kill your soul. Those are my words, not his. So head to our website at foxtalksbusiness.ca. Click on blogs on the left-hand side of the page. You will see this episode and all of the links of where you can get a hold of Bob, listen to his great podcast, which has amazing tips on how to deal with your money and the emotions behind it. Also, the link that you can purchase his book and many more things that you're going to want to access. So head there. So no matter what you're doing today, whether you're just taking a breather or whether you're finally sitting down and saying, you know what? It's time I figure out what this relationship is all about. Find a way to have fun. Because as I always say, if you're not having fun, why are you doing it?